Welcome to Connect, Curate, Create, where we're on a journey through the arts and creative industries. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Butcher. If you're anything like me, you love learning about art and creativity. In each episode, I ask artists and creatives how they navigate life, work, and more besides. They generously share their stories and offer invaluable insights that you and I can put into action. As the author of Creative Work Beyond Precarity, I blend my mission to give artists a fair go with my academic smarts, to ask the questions that draw out lessons we can all learn from.
We absolutely do work outside of the arts. We kind of have to pay the bills. I'm a very big believer in make content for humans, not algorithms, and do whatever is easiest. Consumer behaviour is never going to change. It's still the same. Yes, obviously there's trends, but as far as humans wanting to connect with each other, our brains don't know the difference between connecting one-on-one in person and connecting through a screen. So how can we build those connections through a screen? And then that will motivate people from a marketing perspective to then give us their money so that we can keep creating the work that we want to create.
In this episode, I talk with Kelsey Rosevear, founder of Have and Hold Marketing in Launceston, Tasmania. Kelsey shares her own journey from performing with Stompin to founding a successful consultancy offering digital marketing strategies to creatives. She offers keen insights into how the performing arts can inspire confidence in young people, the importance of content creation to reach our audiences, and why she loves living and working in Tasmania. Be sure to check out the show notes for highlights and links that you can use to shape your own journey. And if you enjoy this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about Connect, Curate, Create. Today, I'm at Enterprise Tasmania in Launceston, where both Connect, Curate, Create are based, and also Have and Hold Marketing. And today, Kelsey Rosevear from Have and Hold Marketing is here to tell us all about what Have and Hold does. Welcome, Kelsey.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
So, Kelsey, Have and Hold very much specialises in marketing for the arts and creative industries. And so perhaps you could tell us, about your background in the arts and therefore why Have and Hold is very much focused in this area.
Yeah, so my background as a teenager was in the performing arts. So I danced for Stompin Youth Dance Company, which to date is Australia's longest running youth dance company. So I think this year is the 33rd year. So it'll be close to 15 years since I started working with them. These days they have a primary program, but they didn't have a primary program back then. So yeah, I started kind of in my late teens. Through that, I was able to be a performer in one of the first Junction Arts Festival programs, which was an amazing experience. So there's lots of different things that we got to do as part of Stompin. And yeah, I really credit that with so much of my personality and my values, which is really exciting. So that kind of happened. And then obviously as life does, you have to stop doing those things. I technically have only just aged out of the program. I could have, had an extra 10 years on top of what I did. But I think, from a career perspective, I was quite driven from a young age. So I had to leave because I had a full-time job and those kinds of things just didn't align. But yeah, now kind of moving into this new career in digital marketing, it's been amazing. So I've said a number of times, it's like coming home. I'm able to work with these organizations again. So I don't necessarily work directly with Stompin on their marketing. However, I am on the board. So I do get an opportunity to advise them on some bits and pieces. And I've also been able to connect or reconnect with a bunch of people in that industry and work directly with them. I was never going to be a professional dancer. I didn't know where those kind of creative fields would lead me. And yeah, now I know. It's all come to kind of this moment.
Yeah. But I suppose, as a teenager, a program like that that you were engaged in, and the performances and events you were working in, I suppose there's so much learning and socialization and just the sense of community around that. And, it's part of your own personal development, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I credit Stompin' a lot to who I am. Absolutely that sense of community. Like, there's nothing like stepping into that room and just being completely comfortable with the people you're in a room with. I was actually just joking with Kaylee, who works for me, before, the amount of times I end a phone call with one of my clients with "love you." Like, what marketer does that? But I've been able to build this really strong community and come back to this community that was so much of a part of those teenage years, which are really turbulent. And to have that place to come back to at all times was absolutely invaluable as a teenager. And so, yeah, it's really lovely to be stepping back into this sense of community and working with not only Stompin', but I also work with Assembly 197, which was formerly known as TasDance. TasDance still exists, but it's kind of a bigger organisation these days. And Emma and Adam, who are the co-ADs at Assembly 197, were my AD and my choreographer at Stompin'. So, yeah, it's amazing to be able to be working with those people and, yeah, like you say, be part of that community and be in that house, the house that Assembly 197 operates out of. 50% of my clients are there. So it's an extension of my office here at Enterprise, is that I can go hang out with that community in that building.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I mean, it does speak to what you've just talked about really speaks to the not just the power of community, but community within the arts and creative industries, and how there's something very special about, particularly, I suppose, performance. I mean, that's not my background, but the performing arts, I suppose you're really putting yourself out there a lot of the time, and so you're sort of pushing yourself, testing your own boundaries, your own vulnerabilities, and that's, as you suggested, that sort of set you up for a career beyond that space. And so, what is it that drives you in terms of business? So you sort of, you have I know from experience working with you, you have a very business mindset. And so what is it that drives you towards that?
Yeah, it's multifaceted. Like, I think I naturally am a very driven person. Business ownership is something that is quite normal in my world. So my dad owns a commercial construction company. My mum's an artist. So I've grown up with being self-employed being the norm. I also think it is the performance thing. And so when I was presenting these lunch and learns with Enterprise last week, again, Kaylee said to me, "You're very calm. Like, why are you so calm?" And I'm like, I think there's something to be said for growing up in front of crowds of people and being forced to just have faith in your own abilities. I really have this jump and the net will appear attitude. And I acknowledge that comes from a place of privilege. Like, I am never going to be on the streets. My family are always going to be able to support me. They did during COVID when I was working in retail and lost that job. They were able to help. So obviously that attitude is knowing that under the safety net that I create for myself, there is an additional safety net of my family. But yeah, the process of being put in front of crowds of people and being put in front of people that you don't know and interacting with them. And this comes from an extremely anxious child, like to the point where I reckon it was a good 3 years that I would not leave the house without a full-blown panic attack. And it's amazing how a child who is like that can then become a performing artist. I've heard Osher Günsberg speak about it in the sense of there's something about because he, again, is a very anxious person, there's something about going on stage and putting on a persona that is more comfortable to me than going to a supermarket I've never been to before. Like, public speaking, being in front of a crowd does not bother me in the slightest. And I think that translates into this drive in business as well, that it's okay to fail. It's okay for people to see you fail. It's a process. It's a creative process. You're never going to get things right the first time. I think it is also an anxious brain, is that you work so hard to make sure that you live up to the expectations that you've given yourself or that someone else has given you. But yeah, I've just always been a very driven person. And I think that one of the reasons that I think my brain is quite not unique, but works really well in this instance, is I have a really strong left brain, right brain. Like, I can switch between the two very easily, which again is, I think, a lot from an anxious mind. I have these thought processes all the time of, when does my personality stop and anxiety start? And actually, I don't want to not be an anxious person, because so much of who I am and the success that I've managed to have is because of that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to acknowledge it, to recognise it, and to understand it rather than necessarily seek to eliminate. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point. Yeah, and so left brain, right brain, and so business brain, comfortable with performance and this coming home, so to speak, that you talk about. So. Yeah, it's not just business, but it's business with purpose as well, isn't it? You Have and Hold is very much a purpose-driven and very much in the arts. So what is the role that Have and Hold plays in the arts here in Launceston, Tasmania, and perhaps further afield?
Yeah, so I think it is really unique in the sense that, like you say, it specialises in that field. And we absolutely do work outside of the arts. We kind of have to pay the bills, because the stuff in the arts isn't always super profitable, unfortunately. There's not really anyone in Tassie doing purely arts stuff. There is Jen from Digital Dandy, who's on the board at Baker Street Festival. And I got to know Jen in my previous role. We were both coaches for the Digital Ready program. So she definitely does a lot of good work in that space. And there's absolutely internal managers for different festivals and things like that, but there's not many of them around. And I think particularly in Launceston, the fact that I grew up here, the fact that I grew up in the arts space here, means that I have a really strong understanding of what it means to create art in Launceston. I took on the marketing manager role at Junction Arts Festival. Again, that is one of those coming home moments, managing the marketing for the festival 11 years after being an artist in the festival.
So there is a really strong arts community, but also there are people who aren't necessarily patronising the arts. People might not necessarily get involved or know about what's going on, or if they do know, they don't know how to get involved. So I guess, is that something that Have and Hold is trying to address? You're not marketing to people like yourself. You're marketing to expand the reach of the arts. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I think a lot of people come across an issue with when they're doing their target markets, whether they're an artist or whether they just own a business, is they think of one group of people. And really there needs to be multiple, because different groups of people will have different motivations. So yeah, there is a really strong arts community in Lonnie, and you will see the same people at every single event. Obviously we want to nurture those people because they're really important to what we do. But there's so many people that we know, if we could just get them to a show, they'd love it. But it's breaking down those barriers for them and making them feel like it's a space for them and that they are welcome in that space. We obviously will welcome anyone into those spaces. That's not necessarily an issue of kind of tweaking what the artists are doing to making it more welcoming. It's more from my perspective is, how do I market these shows? So what are the motivations behind these non-arts crowds, and how can we get them to a show? And it is pure marketing, look at Dark Mofo. Like, my friendship group, it's almost a pilgrimage of people to Hobart. Like, everyone just gets so excited, and we're all, on everyone's computers buying tickets, and we're figuring out where we're going to stay. And these are not arts people. Like, my core group of friends are not arts consumers, but Dark Mofo do such a good job of marketing the festival that everyone just wants to get involved. So it's taking those community aspects from the Dark Mofo, and not just Dark Mofo, but they're just a great example, and figuring out how can we motivate those non-arts audiences to come. So it's a process that we went through with Junction, is really talking about, getting people in for the live music, and then when we've got them, then convincing them to stay for other stuff, convincing them to come to the cabaret, convincing them to come to the nightclub with, the state's best DJs. So yeah, it is a real process, and it is a matter of sometimes as well, the artists hate me saying this, but sometimes making a work that will sell really well. It might not be your most groundbreaking work that you've ever made. It might not be your favourite work that you've ever made. But if it has some level of mass appeal, and obviously we don't want it to be ginormously mass appeal, we still want to stay true to who you are and your values. But if we can create a work that gets the general public in, they're then in our pipeline or in our marketing funnel, to use marketing terminology. We then have their email addresses. We can market them other shows. So it is the gateway drug, getting them in on a kind of more generic show to then sell them the more hard-hitting stuff. I get artists want to make great art, but if they can't sell that art, they then can't continue to make new art. So sometimes it is a matter of just what's going to sell well, and then let's worry about the other stuff down the track.
Yeah. So I definitely think we should come back to some of those strategies. So how the hows and whats of digital marketing, but I suppose the arts and arts organisations wouldn't necessarily be traditionally associated with marketing, and the marketing landscape is shifting significantly in the digital age. So that's perhaps a broader point, but certainly, I guess this sort of tradition of not marketing or not having the marketing sophistication that you're talking about is probably due to constraints in the sector, so financial constraints, and not just not being able to budget for these things in grant applications and so on. So, for arts organisations that really do want to up their game with the marketing, what sort of hints and tips could you offer for dipping their toe in the water of really trying to put themselves out there and get the resources behind that effort?
Yeah. I think the lowest hanging fruit is your social media accounts. Like, you'll see it time and time again that the social media accounts are only ever updated when they've got something to sell. There's no storytelling in there. There's no content about the process of making a new show. And I definitely think that's really, really, really important. I also just think it's a bit of a shift in mindset. So what I'm finding is that obviously historically you would have put an ad in the newspaper or you would have had a TV ad. Those things cost thousands of dollars. And with the reduction of the need to do those things, unfortunately, what seems to have happened is that those lines just get taken out of the budget. They get absorbed elsewhere. Whereas really we should be redirecting that money into digital ad spend or whatever it is. But from a planning perspective, like you say, it's grant applications. It's getting quotes from marketers to include in those grant applications. From my experience, if you can itemize it, they will give you the money, whoever it is that you're trying to get the money off. If you don't put that marketing line in there, you won't get the money, and then you're trying to pull it from artist fees, or it's the CEO of an organisation saying, oh, I'll do 2 days a week less for 2 weeks and we'll redirect that money to the marketer. And unfortunately, it becomes this to and fro of everyone working for free and everyone saying, I can't do any more, which I totally understand where everyone's coming from. And it's a tricky balance from me because I very much straddle the corporate and the arts stuff. Yeah. I want to help as much as I can, but I also need to be paid for my time. So yeah, like I said, the main thing is just making sure that you've got some level of allocation in your budget, just not using it as an afterthought and working with someone consistently over time instead of just working with them when you've got tickets to sell, because it doesn't work. Ask anyone the work that I do on Rook and everyone goes, oh, that's you. It's so consistent and it's so beautiful. And it hasn't been as consistent as what I would have liked it to be recently. But when we have it nailed down, it gets so much attention and we get so many comments from it and we sell out. Once we get to the point where tickets are on sale, they sell out within a couple of days because we've done all of that prior work, rather than trying to slam people in a 3-week time period when you're trying to sell those tickets. So yeah, a lot of it is just longer lead times.
Yeah. So preparation right from the budgeting stage and consistency. Yeah, and I suppose it comes down to making a lot of content. You talked about the socials, and you brought your phone in here today, and even though this is an audio podcast, you're filming yourself as well while we're talking, and so it's that opportunity to make content, I guess, and that's what one of the key things I've learned from working with you for Curate Create is when we're producing content like this, we've got things we can draw on at different stages. There might be something that you say today that you can use in your own content later. And and I suppose one of the things that happens particularly in the smaller arts organisations is everyone's super busy, and there might be an opening night and everyone's getting on with it, and someone might take a few pictures, but there's not that it's not fully documented. There's not everything is captured, and there could be something that's missed. And so for those who are really trying to do things on tight budgets and with really stretched resources, are there little hints and tips around how to capture these little stories to produce that overall narrative, so that over time we gain that you get the attention of potential clients and patrons?
Yeah. Film everything. Like I say, my phone's set up today. It's just because you never know what might come of this conversation and what snippet we might be able to pull out. It is one of the things that I try really hard to do, particularly with my clients, is I spend a lot of time in the studio with them when they're making. I might not necessarily be directly working on their stuff at the time. I just move my office there for the day. So then I'm available to capture little moments, and I'll either see a little moment and I'll start filming, or I'll hear my name being called out and they'll say, come get this. This is going to look really cool. Obviously, you can't always have someone there, but even just having the most basic equipment yourself. So there's my main tripod that I use for my phone is a $20 Kmart tripod. Just having that there, sitting it in the corner and filming, and then you can chop it up into little snippets from there. Time and time again, the pieces of content that get the most engagement from a social media perspective is the stuff that I've taken on my phone. My phone, as any marketer's phone is just full of 5-second clips of the most random things, but it's all amazing content to then be able to stitch together. The beauty of particularly iPhones now too is that I don't necessarily worry about taking stills. The quality of the video is so good that I can just get a still from it. Obviously, if I'm being strategic about it, I'll try and take the stills as well, but when it's a time crunch or a resource crunch, you don't need to. I think people get really overwhelmed thinking that they need to get videographers and photographers in all the time, and absolutely they are invaluable and we should be using them and we should be supporting their businesses. Like, I'm not by any means saying that a phone is a substitute for a professional videographer, but as far as that development stuff and that storytelling content goes, just do it yourself on your phone and then get your photographers and your videographers in for your shows, for your openings, to get that really high quality content there. But yeah, don't feel like everything that you do needs to be the best produced thing in the world. You will do what you need to do with your phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great advice. Thank you. Look, to get back to have and hold and just how you work and support arts organisations. You've given us some really invaluable insights into who you work with and how you work with them. I suppose what would be really helpful, for me at least, would be to understand, how have and hold is helping to grow the community and engage more people, and what the future of that is. So particularly in the context of digital marketing, the digital age more broadly, what is it that you do that adds so much value to the arts?
Yeah. It's strategy. So one of the things that I'm pretty strict on, as you've seen, you've gone through the process, is making sure that before I work with anyone, they all go through a proper strategy with me. Now, that doesn't always happen in the arts because there's not always the budget. Again, like I say, though, these organisations currently that I'm working with, I have so much history with them that I don't necessarily need that strategy to happen because it comes so naturally to me. However, as Have and Hold gets bigger and I'm less and less on the tools, it doesn't work as well. So I need Kaylee also to be able to understand that stuff. So that's when that strategy really comes into play. The main thing that helps really well, and the way that I like to do things, whether it's with arts clients or not, is just it's really holistic. I'm looking at everything. So even though I might be running their social media account, say I'm just doing social media management, I still know everything that's happening. I know on sale dates for tickets. I know when assets are due. I know when the photographers are going to be there. I know what dates are being filmed. I know when grant applications are due or when strategic plans are being redone. I have eyes on everything, which is completely exhausting, but means that I can make really strong decisions and really strategic decisions. And it means that I can be super flexible. So a client might be on a package that says that they get 5 posts a week. However, if I know that they're going through a bit of a month where things are a little bit quiet, but then they're going to be really busy again, as much as I want things to be as consistent as they possibly can, I can kind of redirect those deliverables. It's also a really efficient way to do things if I am working across multiple things, because at the end of the day, if you're doing a social post and an email to your mailing list, it's the same content. So I can do the email, I can do the social media post, I can update your website, I can do all of that. And I think that's probably the most valuable things from my client's perspective, is that they know that I have eyes on everything and I will either do all of the things or I will direct the right people. So we've got a Rook show in Monofoma this week. Yes, I'm only doing certain bits and pieces, but also I've had a conversation with Mona's PR person. I've had a conversation with the photographers. I have my eyes on everything, and it means that I can take something off the artist's plate as well to make sure that they can make their art, because that's a big thing. Like, artists didn't become artists because they want to market themselves. They just want to make their work. And some of them are really good at it, but most aren't, unfortunately. Most just want to create something beautiful, which is incredible, but they don't necessarily have that analytical brain that knows how to distribute material. And you get people that are epic at it, like Freya, the CEO of Rook, is absolutely amazing. But I was texting her before saying, I've just taken this off your plate. I'm having a conversation with the photographer. And her reply was, yeah, thanks. I'm trying really hard to be an acrobat today. Like the switch between the CEO brain and the artist brain. And having me on board means that the artist can be more in their artist brain and less in their CEO or their AD brain, which can only happen when I'm working holistically and I'm across everything. From a budget perspective, that's really tricky from the artist, and I definitely give away more time than I should. And in the future, I'm probably going to have to cut back. But right now, at this point of time, this stage of business, I'm able to do that. And I'm never going to stop it completely. My partner wishes that I wouldn't give away as much as I do. And like I said, it needs to be cut back, but I love it. It's my favorite thing to do. Yes, I still need to run a profitable business, but the balance will come eventually, and it's a heck of a lot better than what it was last year. So yeah, it's really exciting to see kind of how that'll shift and change in the future.
Yeah, it's good to see you and your business growing as well. You know, it's because going back to the point before, you know, it is all about purpose. You care. You just told us how passionate you are about seeing the whole community thrive. So yeah, I just going back to digital marketing, and something that sort of strikes me about, you know, which I'm quite new to, is how there are these digital intermediaries in. So whilst, you know, the reasons why we schedule posts regularly, and we have to be strategic about this, is because there's SEO and there's AI now, and there's all these things going on in order to that determine what goes in front of viewers' eyes or ears or whatever. But it's how do you get that out to the market? So there's a lot to be done, right? And so there's so much nuance in behind what you do, and it's not something that's necessarily the core competence of arts workers, arts organisations, arts individual artists, and so on. But it's absolutely essential.
For sure. So, and again, that's something that the artists themselves are probably never going to wrap their head around, and I don't blame them. Like it's a whole other world. And again, that's what I said in the beginning about the beauty of the fact that I have that left brain, right brain thing, is that I can do that really well. But it is like, it's being strategic about it. I'm a very big believer in make content for humans, not algorithms, and do whatever is easiest for you. So it might make sense for you to post things in real time, but in reality, it's probably going to take you longer to do that. When I say schedule things in advance, it is less about algorithms and more about making it easier for the artist themselves or the client, because constantly doing things in real time is just so overwhelming. You constantly feel like you're falling behind. But then, of course, there is also that other side of things that, because of what I do and because of the amount of accounts I work on, I have an inherent knowledge in myself of what days and times are going to be best to post and when things perform better. It's just kind of this other thing in my brain that happens. But I also spend a stupid amount of money. I think I'm up to about $15,000 a year on software to help me do things like this. So, and this is something that I think is hard with artists, is that they don't want to pay the money for the software. And I totally get that, because cash is really hard, but it's money or it's time. And unfortunately what happens is that they end up wasting a whole heap of time. But working with a marketer means that I have access to all of that software. And majority of the time, my arts clients also then have their own access to that software. So while with majority of my corporate clients, I'm not giving them access to my scheduling software because I don't want them to go in and mess something up, I trust the artists. And so then they are then able to use that software for themselves. So my arts clients will often, yes, I will have my stuff that I've scheduled based on the kind of deliverables for my retainer. But if they've got additional things, they can jump in and do that. And my scheduling software will tell them, hey, it's better to be posting an hour later than what you're planning or whatever that is. But yeah, it's systems and processes which historically creatives aren't good at.
Well, not educated in, right?
Yeah.
So I've talked about this on my newsletter about, I have an engineering background, and so a bit like you, there's the left brain and the right brain, me, and so I've sort of had to learn how to prepare, how to plan, how to be strategic, how to think tactically in certain situations, and been equipped through my education with all those tools. But you don't learn those things at art school, and
you barely learn them at business school.
Well, indeed. Yeah, so that was a reference to myself being a business school professor.
Not that you're ever my professor.
But no, Kelsey, you're entirely right, and I think that does speak to a broader point of, there is a push within the arts and creative industries for us all to become more professional, to become more market facing, to be able to attract A, the funding, and B, the patrons, and to produce high quality art. And so then we can either find the money to outsource all of this, or find ways to engage, to get our stories out there in other ways. But nobody's really teaching us how to do all that. And so that's that's something important that Have and Hold do. But also I do think that there is a need, there's this huge gap in understanding how to operate in any sort of organization in a meaningful, purposeful way in such a market-driven economy that we operate in. And I think that's a conundrum we've never solved. But I think there are the tools, resources, the organizations out there that can help us to adapt. So, I mean, just to get towards wrapping up, the future is digital.
Yeah.
So what does it look like for you? What does it look like for Have and Hold? What does it look like for the arts community here in northern Tasmania?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Obviously, we look at a lot of AI tools in digital marketing, but I think outside of digital marketing and finance and industries like that, another big industry is the arts. AI is going to have a huge impact, and already is having a huge impact on the arts. We've just seen it there's a bit of a pushback to Tourism Tasmania have just launched this Tasmania program, which essentially, you're putting in a prompt as if it's ChatGPT to say, hey, create me an artwork that looks like this. And they're working with a number of Tasmanian artists, and they're going to go back in and choose their favourite prompts, and then the artists are going to create work for those prompts, which is a really interesting marketing tactic coming from them. But I think both in digital marketing and in the arts, there's this real hesitation towards using AI, and I think we can't ignore it. We have to use it as a tool, and use it as a tool to make our work better and our work more efficient, rather than shying away from it and saying, it's taking my job, it's ruining the industry. Use it as a tool. It makes us so much more efficient, and it can open up really great opportunities. Like we've just started paying for ChatGPT so that it can write image descriptions for us. So both from an algorithm perspective, from an accessibility perspective, it just means that our work is a lot better. But yeah, for artists and both managing their work and from a digital marketing perspective, utilizing these tools as best we can as far as opening up inefficiencies, whether it can do tasks for us that have historically taken us so long, particularly with grant writing or award writing. If you have an existing grant submission or an existing award that you won, ChatGPT will just completely do all of the work for you. You give it that submission, you give it the feedback that you've got and any updated information, and it's done. It's incredible. So it's just thinking when you're about to sit down and do a task that's really menial, or that is just going to take you a long time. Is there a more efficient way that I can do this? So an example from the other day, I was sitting in a board meeting and we were having this discussion about taking this beautiful strategic plan that I had designed and made look beautiful. That's great, but it's not a workable document. So translating that into a workable document, the general manager of the organisation had spent hours upon hours of copying and pasting all of that content, which when you're looking at it from a PDF, it doesn't format properly. It's just a horrible job to do. I thought she'd only just started doing it. And so I was like, plug it into ChatGPT, it'll do it for you. She'd already done it. She had already wasted a full day doing it. So just thinking about opening up those efficiencies. But as far as digital marketing goes and what the future looks like, the absolute content-heavy machines of social media are not going to change. That's going to stay around. We're still going to have to be videoing everything. We're going to have to be taking photos. Social media platforms will come and go, but content is king. Unfortunately, we just have to keep creating and documenting your process, documenting your mistakes. That's a massive thing. Nobody ever in the arts industry wants to share their mistakes, but that's super interesting to people. Obviously, there's exceptions to that rule. If something goes wrong and it wasn't safe, we don't want to share that with the world. Obviously, we're going to go through our own internal process to make sure that that situation doesn't happen again. However, I very, very, very rarely see that. The artists that I work with are just incredible in their safety practices. But documenting those mistakes, sharing those mistakes with the world and sharing that process, I think we are all so disconnected from each other because of social media. But the other side of that coin is that if you create content that helps people connect with you or helps people connect with each other, that is gold from a marketing perspective. Consumer behavior is never going to change. It's still the same. Yes, obviously there's trends, but as far as humans wanting to connect with each other, our brains don't know the difference between connecting one-on-one in person and connecting through a screen. So how can we build those connections through a screen? And then that will motivate people from a marketing perspective to then give us their money so that we can keep creating the work that we want to create.
That's a wonderful way to wrap up, Kelsey. The final question that I ask everyone here is if you could put it into 3 words. The 3 words, why Tasmania?
Oh gosh, why Tasmania? In 3 words. Community, absolutely. Community is number 1 in Tassie, no matter where you look. Community, beauty. I think we live in like a visually beautiful place, no matter where you look. Even, we're in the smack bang in the middle of the CBD and we've got a very leafy outlook here. But yeah, beautiful work. Our artists are creating incredible things for sure. 3rd word, still on the lines of community, but connection, the way that Tassie brings people together. So Rook, for instance, 5 of the world's best acrobats. Like, I can never quite get people to fathom how famous these people are. They're living in Launceston or living in northern Tasmania, and the way that Tasmania they were connected in other ways, and to be fair, they are 2 married couples, but to be able to create even more connections so these 5 people could be in the same place at the same time, creating a beautiful work where you can see the connections between each other. It's when I first started working with them, and it was the world premiere of Interloper, and the the main feedback that I had from them was the connection and the way that they look at each other with such love. And I think we see those connections in Tassie time and time again. Everywhere you look, those connections happen. So yeah, it's a beautiful place, Tassie. We're very lucky to be here. I'm very lucky to have spent my whole life here. Why would I want to be anywhere else?
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect, Curate, Create. I hope you found inspiration and insights that you can apply to your own creative work. For highlights and links, check out the show notes, and be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast player so you never miss an episode. Tune in next time as I continue to explore life and work in the arts.